Hi, I'm Dr. Bertice Perry, and I want to tell you a story. Several years back, I injured my foot on a hiking trip. I had cracked down on a piece of lava rock, and it was painful and it was quite something, but I continued the trip and I continued hiking, and I just moved around with a limp. I got back, I went to my doctor because the pain hadn't subsided at all. In fact, it had gotten worse. And I went to the doctor and I explained everything, and he said, "Oh, you're probably, you're getting older. It's probably um, plantar fascia. Your plantar fasciitis is causing you pain, and it happens when you get older. So go online and get this strap and sleep in that, and it'll help as you flex your foot and relax it at night." So I did that. I walked around on it for a year, and it just got increasingly worse. And I had gone back to the doctor a couple of times, and they'd given me steroid shots, and I just didn't like it at all because I would injure some other part of my body because you don't feel it turned off all the nerve endings saying that something is bothering you. I mean, it was likened to taking the battery out of a smoke alarm. When the fire's raging, you don't know it because you took the battery out, and just because you can't hear it, you think everything's okay. So after about a year of this terrible, terrible pain, I went to the Rapid Care Center, and the PA there looked at it and said, "You really, we did an x ray, but you really need a CT scan, and you need to see a surgeon, and you need to see one right away." So they scheduled one right away, and I went, and the surgeon did all the CT scans and everything, and he said, "And it's really, really bad, and I don't know how you've been walking on it." And he said, "We're going to schedule your surgery. I want you to go over to this orthopedic device place and get fitted for your boot. You're going to need to wear the boot after the surgery, but you should put it on now to be helpful. And keep it on." He said, "Keep it on. It will really help a little bit. We're going to have to shoot you up again. And I know you don't want any meds or anything, but you really do need to do something." And so I was like, "Well, okay." So I did that. And, I had the surgery, and they said the part that we had to remove, they had to do a fasciotomy. And the part that they had to remove was, they said it looked like, the part we left in looked like the piece that we typically take out, and you only have a little piece left. There was nothing. It was so damaged, it was shredded, and it was much, much worse than we thought, and surgery was a lot longer and everything. And so as I'm going through the recovery, the healing, and I was like, "Well, it's like you can't get in the shower. You have to keep all this wrapping on. You can't walk around. You have to, stay on a scooter. You can't do anything." So I'm sitting and sitting and sitting, and finally, weeks go by and weeks go by, and I go in, and he says, "Okay, you can walk a little now, and you can put a little pressure on it." And I heard, "You can walk." And so I started walking again, and then it was, my foot was on fire, and I went in and I was like, "This is really bad." And he looked at it. He said, "You were healing so nicely. What did you do?" And I said, "You said I could walk again." He said, "Well, how much walking are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I used to do 10 miles a day, but I'm up to 3, and I'm going to get there, but it's really painful." And he looked at me and said, "I meant you could put enough pressure on it, walk on it like to the bathroom." And this was like he's a really good surgeon, really, really good surgeon. My doctor, I'm sure, was a good doctor. Everybody along the way was good at what they do. But what I realized was that we all heard what we wanted to hear. My doctor heard what he typically heard in somebody around my age at the time, getting older, doing a lot of activity, that this is what it was. The surgeon heard, I want to get up and walk, and well, you can walk now. And I heard I could get back to my old walking. I also heard um, permission to go back to what I used to do. I didn't hear any of the words of caution for what I had been through and what I needed to do. I didn't hear that. And I realize that a lot of times we're communicating with each other, but we're only hearing what we want to hear. I notice even within the story group, people will, and even on this page, they'll stop and share their story before they even heard the whole thing. And I do it. I do it in my mind. I'm hearing a story and I'm thinking my story that connects, because we are wired for narrative. And the narrative that's in your mind automatically connects with that one. But I have to shut that off and say, I can come back to this. Let me hear the rest of this story. Chances are, while you were listening to this story, you were hearing, oh, I remember when I injured this, and I remember when I injured that, and I remember when I did this. And there are so many points of connection that we hear what we want to hear, what we feel we need to hear to release us into what we want to do, rather than hearing the instruction for how we should move. I know that we are hearing what we need to hear, but we don't always like what we're hearing, or we interpret and we hear what we want to hear. In my family, we joke that my mother said the most brilliant things that anyone's ever said, but she was yelling at us when she was saying it. And some of us remembered the yelling, and we didn't remember the wisdom. Right now, we're getting wisdom, and we're not paying attention. We want to hear, I can go back now. We want to hear, but he lost and he won. We want to hear what we want to hear in spite of the facts. Now, I know my injury was the result of an underlying illness, that because of MS, I was falling all over the place. But if I had stopped at any of those places and paid attention to the underlying illness, it wouldn't have gotten as bad as it was. That's where we are right now. Sit down, be still, listen to one another, to your own heart, and listen, as Howard Thurman says, for the sound of the genuine within. If not, you'll always find yourself dancing on the ends of strings that someone else is pulling. I love you.